Hello, Illia Hart here, and I'm back with Guy Armstrong. We're going to do another session on body electronics, another discussion. And I think this is number 3, is it, Guy? I started realizing that I have to start numbering these for the YouTube channel, so I put number 3 on today. So so body electronics for the newcomers is a holistic modality, and by holistic I mean it is we use the holistic construct of physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual. And within that construct, through the healing crises, through the encouragement of the healing crises, we go back through and undo and unravel any suppressed trauma and what we call resistance in body electronics, which is the definition of resistance is anything less than pure unconditional love. So we're removing that as we go through the healing crises and transmute. So that's a real brief and explanation, but that's just to get the newcomers started if they haven't any previous body electronics information. The sun's just going down here now, so it will. Just in the window here, it'll just be bright for a few moments. So where are we at today as far as our what topics would we like to look at today? I don't know what we did last time. Do you remember what we talked about last time? Have to go back.
Not off the top of my head, no, sorry. It was about a month ago.
I think we talked, yeah, it has been a while. I think we talked about the emotional body a bit. Yesterday I did another video with a body electronics, a student of body electronics, and I felt to begin with the basics. So I showed the gallon of liquid minerals from Enzymes International, and I talked a little bit about the nutritional program. So if people are interested, you can look back. I mean, there's many videos, and you can look on my website. I'll give it at the end of the talk. And but it's really important. I was saying yesterday that every time I am working from the maintenance level of minerals to the saturation level for point holding, I go into the healing crisis so profoundly as that's happening. And it always reminds me of how powerful those minerals are, those liquid minerals. So I'm almost at the bottom of my my last gallon. And about 3-4 weeks ago, I ordered 4 more gallons from Wisconsin, from Eleanor. So I hope they're on their way. So they'll be here soon.
That's great.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think I remembered a couple of things we talked about in our last video. I think you began by talking about names and you talked about your trip to Peru.
Oh, right. Yeah.
How you had that beautiful moment in the cave.
Right.
And yeah, and I remember we mentioned grain fields a little bit.
Oh, yes.
Is the
Grainfields is out of New Zealand. And, you know, after that discussion, I looked up Grainfields because I haven't had some for quite a long time. There used to be a woman selling it out of New York City. And so for North America, it was still expensive. I think it was like maybe $35 US a bottle, but it was available. But now it isn't. It's only available in New Zealand. I couldn't find any US distributor and none in Canada. I don't think there ever has been. I mean, there's a Canada. You look up Grainfields Canada or Grainfields US, you'll come to a website that goes directly to the one in New Zealand. And
no, they're in Australia.
Oh, right, they're in Australia. That's right. Do you order them from Australia?
I made an order the other day. First time in, I don't know, 20 something years.
Wow.
It's been in the back of my mind for a long time. You know, I got to try it. So
yeah. Oh, great. Yeah, they really set the when we're point holding and with the minerals, it disturbs and starts to expel a lot of the toxins that has built up in the body, and there's a lot of need for extra probiotics as we're upping the minerals into the saturation level.
Yeah.
I'm sure you can remember the Pointholding groups and intensives that you've been to. It's just a part of it. It's and it really doesn't have, in my observation, it really doesn't have anything to do with how clean a person's diet is. Even it's going so deep. The minerals root out things that are so deep that even people who have had a very clean gastrointestinal tract, with the saturation level of minerals, I don't know anybody that's been exempt from some very deep foulness that comes forth to be expelled.
Mm. Yeah, and you don't just mean physical foulness. You mean, like you said before,
right?
Mental, emotional, mental, spiritual. Yeah,
right.
And I'll testify to that. There's been a few times at your groups and recently, and back in the day, back 10, 15, 20 years ago, when it's just it's been really, I don't know how to put it into words. Really, where the experiences are just so intense and amazing. There's been a small handful of point holdings that have just really stuck in my mind as a sort of a signpost of what is possible and what leads me to understand my own nature and the nature of other people better, I think, and how we can sort of train ourselves to do things that we use the word involutionary, like I wrote yesterday on the page. It's really amazing to see some of our deeply held thoughts are really harmful to us, and in some subconscious way we maybe want that to be like that. I don't know about. I don't want to speak to other people, but
I interpreted that writing that you posted as these are the ways in which we sabotage ourselves from our evolutionary process.
yeah,
So
kind of,
it's just these these sabotages that surface, and we have to be aware of that. I mean, justification can be a type of sabotage, because if we're justifying where we're at, whether that's emotionally or even physically, we're impeding that evolutionary movement forward. So there's a multitude of ways that we can sabotage our progression, and that was an excellent writing to bring that forth for people, so that they can just be aware of that. And and those, I think they actually they can be more subtle as we go up the scale of emotion. So the sabotage can be more subtle, but yet have an extreme, like a profound effect upon movement up, what we call in body electronics, movement up scale within the emotional body. So yeah.
So movement upscale basically means transmuting, letting go of the unconsciousness, the apathy, the fear, the sort of what we might call enslaving, or the binding, the compulsive emotion. Maybe compulsive is a better word.
Mm-hmm.
Letting go of the
patterns. Yeah, the patterns. Yeah, that can be so ingrained that we're not even aware that they're there.
Absolutely.
I always find that really interesting when a pattern comes up on the table, that it's like, and it could be a new, and as we're moving up scale, those patterns, like I said, they can seem more subtle, but they can be very, I guess they're just coming out of the unconsciousness.
Mm.
That
they can be subtle but immensely powerful.
That's it. Yeah.
Like it's kind of like looking through a stained glass window. I think Doug makes this analogy somewhere, like you're looking through a glass window and it's colored a certain color, and you've only ever seen the world through that window, through that kind of color, and so that's normal. And then you know, get rid of that or lighten the shade a bit, and you realize, wow, now I've got a new normal. I've got something new.
I think that's a biblical analogy, because I think the biblical words are, at least in English, we see through a glass darkly.
Yeah, that's right.
John used to say that.
Yeah.
But that is in the Bible somewhere. I'm not a biblical scholar, but I know that's where it came from. Yeah, but yes, absolutely. Yeah, what we're observing is through our own patterns and programs, that we're on this sort of unconsciously. We're on this until we take those steps to move those patterns out. They can often be an enigma to us.
Yeah, it's really amazing to see and hear people on the point holding table and all the word patterns that have, like, I have to, or I can't. Just got, you're looking at the human mind almost maybe likening it a little bit to a computer, where it's, you imagine typing this into your computer, I have to always be this or do this or something. I have to fail, or I have to win, or I can't win, or I can't lose, or I can't be something.
Yeah.
And
I must serve.
Yeah, I must serve. I have to help. Yeah, and it's really amazing to sort of have to think, we can become free from all of these enslaving patterns. I think it would be really good practice for a beginner or a person who's just interested in BE to just pay really close attention to their own thoughts and spoken words while they're just going about their day. And
yes, that's for sure.
Just sort of a mental note, or even if you're like the kind of person that writes things down, write down when you've got a word pattern like I have to do this, or I can't do that.
And often those word patterns are silent, not just what we're speaking, but those more subtle patterns of that tape that's going around silently, to be aware of that internal dialogue. And that internal dialogue will often give us lots of word patterns if we really pay attention to that.
Yeah.
I have here's something that I'd like to speak on. So recently, because I'm doing a talk tomorrow here in Nelson, British Columbia, downtown, and I've done a little slideshow on body electronics. I'm going to record it, so I will put it up on the Body Electronics Facebook page eventually. Probably by Monday it'll be up there. And I've been contemplating, like, as I was doing the slideshow, I've been very, for all of the years that I've been in body electronics, I've been very aware, and speaking of words, I've been very aware of the ways in which I changed wording within the body electronics work and within the literature. And when I first started watching the videos, and John had all those videos professionally videotaped in Australia in 1996 and 1997, and there's some even later too. And so it would be body electronics, the science of regeneration, the most miraculous healing modality on earth. And so when I started teaching, I took all of that out. So I didn't use the word miraculous anymore. And I would sometimes speak on it, saying that the reason I don't use that word is that all possibility, and the changes that we see within ourselves, within our physicalities, and other ways. This is a natural and normal process, not to be considered miraculous. The only reason we call it miraculous is that it's something that we don't often encounter, and because of that, that word miraculous is made. So I wanted to instill that we have all possibility here, and the consciousness change is at the core of this all possibility. And so recently, though, in just doing this slideshow, I realized that I have been downplaying the effects of body electronics. Because my feeling was the proof is in the pudding. So people will find out for themselves. If they get on the table and they're doing the work for any length of time at all, they will discover the power of body electronics. That's always been my approach. Yet, what has happened over, I've been in body electronics going on 24 years now. What has happened, especially in my teaching career, is that because of sort of my downplaying, there has been very few people come to body electronics. I would literally downplay it in my language. I would make it really seem, if you read it, it would be, just there's nothing fantastical or magnificent about it at all. And I realized that I wanted to change that a little bit. I won't use the word miraculous because of the reason I just said, but I would really, if you have any input on that, Guy, around, even if it comes to you later, you can write me, and we can sort of incorporate some different wording that would allow people to understand and know what those possibilities actually are. And I did a session this week with someone, and I found myself telling the story of this woman who had come to one of Doug's events in Pennsylvania. I think it was sometime around 2002. And I don't remember her name, but I remember she was from Florida, and I think she was a chemical engineer. And I was holding her points, and I remember I was holding a pineal point. And I also remember that it was an extremely intense session. And I think one of my very first sessions that I experienced electricity as a point holder. And it was like, sticking my index finger into a 220 plug. And, but it would come in waves. So it would cycle. So there'd be like a minute or a minute and a half of intense electricity come out of the point. And then it would subside somewhat. So, I was literally, the sweat was dripping off my chin. And, I would even have times when it was so intense that it was like dizzying, as it often is when you're holding points. And so, but I was really giving it my all, and she went through a tremendous, and I have permission to share this, by the way. We don't talk about anybody's sessions unless we have permission to share. And she went through this tremendous memory of having what she called a botched appendectomy. And apparently, and there had even been a lawsuit following it. Apparently, the surgeon had come in because, of course, it was an emergency appendectomy, and the surgeon had come in under the influence of alcohol. So it was, and she had described later the really ugly scar. And it was, it was quite an intense trauma for her, and she really worked at that. And it was a very long session. I think it went closer to 3 hours. We usually usually the norm is around a 2-hour session. We don't put a time thing on body electronics, but it's usually around 2 hours because the minerals kind of can run out after that much energy is put forth. So it's usually around that time when the points start to cycle and complete. But this one went on, and like I said, it was intense electricity. And so eventually, I mean, she got to a really beautiful transmutation and a really wonderful completion. And she was really light. I mean, I just remember how really light she was when she got off the table, and was just so full of glow, and her love was just permeating the room. And she went to the washroom, and we heard her scream in the bathroom. And it was a huge event. Like I think there was close to 50 people. There's 40 some people at that particular event. And she came back into the main hall, and she had her pants down partially, and she was just crying and weeping and blurting like what was happening. And she had completely, none of us had, of course, had seen the scar previous. We took her word for it. And the scar had completely dissolved and was gone, completely gone. Oh. And I mean, I saw lots of scars disappear over the years, like many, many, many scars. And of course, many other things. And that would be considered that word miraculous, right? If we didn't know it as being normal in body electronics. So, everybody celebrated her great success in, she removed that trauma from her consciousness. And when you remove all of the aspects that are there, then the things that are being perpetuated in the physical realm, so that mental, emotional construct, that the resistance within that keeps that scar perpetuated on a person's body, is removed by a powerful transmutation. And then it can't exist then in this realm. And that's maybe, if you're hearing that for the first time, that may be something for you to get your head around. You can look at Doug's book, How We Heal, and read about, I think in the first part, he does a really great chapter, and he talks about like just putting, how it ends up in the field, how it ends up in the physical, and that holographic projection that's being put into the field that we experience as 5 sense reality. So anyway, that evening, I went back to my motel room and had my shower, and I've had 5 surgeries over and over and over on the same scar. So, the first surgery was I was 10 years old, and it was a reconstruction surgery of my right ureter. So my right kidney wasn't working properly for the first 10 years of my life. It was recycling. It had the ureter between the kidney and the bladder. It was recycling urine back through into the kidney, and it wasn't flowing. So I had that reconstruction surgery, and it made about, I would say, about a 12-inch. I was 10, so I think it was about a 12-inch scar that ended up being extreme keloid tissue, and it sat up about a half an inch, and it was very wide. It was about 3/4 of an inch wide, and with that keloid tissue, it just expands. So, and then beyond that, I had 4 cesarean sections, and the surgeons used that same scar. They just said, okay, well, let's just, you already have a scar there, so we'll use that same place. And so after 5 surgeries, you can imagine what the keloid tissue, it was just this, it was a mess. It was just an absolute mess. And when I showered that evening, I was like, I didn't have anybody to scream to or show. I was showing people the next day though. But my scar went from that mess of a keloid tissue to what you could, like a fine tip pen, like a very, very, very fine tip pen. So you can see the scar there. You can see where there's a scar, but it went from that large to just the tiniest little scar, and it's remained like that all of these years. And that was just from my willingness to hold that point. Just that willingness to endure. That's how I saw it after, because I wasn't actively transmuting. I wasn't looking for memory. I wasn't looking for word patterns and emotion. I was just sweating and holding that point to the very best of my ability for that woman to get as much as she possibly could out of her session. And
that reminds me of a principle where they say you'll get great healing if you're willing for other people to have great healing first.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Those old 1990s videos, they always talk about, don't be selfish with the healing. Be okay for other people to have the healing. Just reminds me of that.
Yeah, be perfectly okay, and be not to put yourself on the on a lesser, because I've seen that over the years where people, they have that pattern, I must serve, so then they have that pattern underneath their service, and so there's like this how to put it, there's like a wall there between, and so they make themselves lesser than, and so they put the other person first, you see. So, but they do that because of a pattern,
not because of lack of jealousy and a real love,
or just the willingness to do your very best, just that willingness, and for that other person to put yourself aside, I guess would be the best, to be as uncomfortable as you are holding the points. We can have electricity, burning, numbness. I mean, I've had numbness where my, a whole part of my body was completely gone holding points on a person with diabetes. So, that numbness, that unconsciousness, that numbness was coming out. And, you just experience these things, and you experience them willingly. But I wasn't doing any active transmutation. I was just willingly holding those points, or holding that one particular point. So that's one of the things that I'm really changing about the way I'm putting forth the work, so that people really truly understand the depth of body electronics, where it can take you. And anybody that studies with me, I say, you're a student of body electronics. You're not a student of me as an individual. You're a student of body electronics. And I'm happy and willing to provide the education, but all of the effort and all of the effect is entirely up to each individual. And that starts right away with the nutritional program, as the foundation. Not just a nutritional, not just that, but also the things that are that we take away, that we give up, that we let go. The sugar, the caffeine, the recreational drugs, alcohol use, all of those things that we let go of in order for the the suppression to lift and be able to come forth. So it's not just what we're adding, but it's also what we're letting go.
Yeah.
It's so important. And I found over the years, maybe you can talk on this, Guy. I found over the years how I call it refinement. That's how I've seen it over the years, because I can look back, and even though I was having tremendous results with body electronics, I was still having tremendous results, but yet I was unwilling to let certain things go over the years. And so I would hang on to like certain substance.
Yep.
I remember like wheat, for example. I hung on to wheat for a very long time. Letting go of wheat was a tremendous feat. And I mean, I can still make the choice to have it if it's organic, if whatever. I can still make that choice. But it doesn't have anything like it doesn't have a control over me anymore. And like 99% of the time, I choose not to have wheat in my diet. So, but so that refinement is what I'm talking about. And we're always on the lookout for what to let go of next. That refinement of
that's a really good point.
Yeah, the nutrition. Yeah. Have you had that experience in your body electronics?
Yeah, my first few years, I was probably a bit gung ho and a little bit crazy, and didn't really know how to. I guess I wasn't a very good cook, so the foods I ate. I can remember having this big salad one day. I think it was like half muesli and half salad. These carrots and the big green carrot stalks in it. And it was just a really bizarre kind of meal. So yeah, it's definitely been a learning curve. But yeah, I kind of do my best to have natural food and salads. And recently, I've been making a lot of curries. Dal and lentils and chickpea curries, sometimes with a bit of fish, that sort of thing. So yeah, as far as letting go of stuff, I find point holding itself as an activity really helps me. I think in some stages of my progress, it's probably been a requirement, just for giving up stuff like alcohol and sugar and that sort of thing, or at least being more able to control it. Because in the last few years, I was a pretty compulsive kind of person in my youth. In the last few years, it's been more like if I have a drink or something, it'll be a glass of wine or two or a beer, and I'll sort of space it over the course of the entire meal. Something not that I drink very often anyway. But back in the day, it was a bit yahoo, bit of a wild boy, and get up to all the crazy things that people in their late teens and early 20s sort of get up to. But having said that, I was pretty committed to body electronics even back then. But I still did have a lot of cravings and addictions, and I think mine would come along sort of quite suddenly. Like go into the supermarket and maybe there's a lack of focus, and you walk past the bakery and all of a sudden start salivating and sort of things, seeing all the chocolate eclairs and the caramel slices and that sort of thing. So yeah, definitely had a few successes and a few failures as far as giving into temptation. But nowadays I've pretty much let go of all sorts of cakes and cookies and stuff like that. I'm not tempted by it at all. I think that might partly be brought about by some a little bit of experience, and I've been to the dentist a few times over the years, just because it's not ideal going to the dentist, but sometimes you got to go. So So yeah, I think that's partly why I avoid sugar. And I'm sure if you have a really good diet, I've read in the past that you crave sugar more if you're protein deficient, sort of like that guy, Dr. Mungulich, wrote the book about water and how you crave food if you're dehydrated.
Right.
And you know there'll be a sort of a confusion there.
Yeah.
Like you would have heard of those experiments where scientists put a plate of food out and a plate of sugar out for flies or rodents or something, and they all just go for the sugar. Or that kind of thing. So yeah, I'm a lot wiser now, but I agree it's definitely been a sort of a gradual refining process. And I definitely recommend to people, I like to eat different things a lot. I'm just one of those people that doesn't like to have the same kind of thing. I'm a bit like a hummingbird. You know, I don't like the same meal every time. So yeah, I definitely recommend some good sort of cookbooks with a focus on maybe not to mean it compulsively, but I think sort of aiming towards vegetarianism is probably a good thing. I mean, I'm a New Zealander, so we eat tons of meat in this country traditionally, although nowadays there's a big focus on vegetarianism and veganism. Did you want to talk about eating meat at all, or not eating meat or anything? Did you want to discuss that at all?
I mean, it's true. Like originally, like I gave up pork like many years ago, and I mean, I was raised on a farm. I was a farm girl, so we ate a lot of like high quality meat. You know, my mother's she was Irish, so we had meat, potatoes, and vegetables. That was the traditional meal. You know, 7 nights a week, basically. So moving away from that was an interesting process. Like when Doug was first teaching, he and I think he talks about it in How We Heal as well. He said a lot of education around not eating pork. So not only the like the parasites and the bacteria that can be transferred from pigs to humans. Human's a bad word now, you know. Like everybody's, I've heard all these things now about. So I'm always conscious when I say the word human now. But to these, you know, beings that we call humans, so we can actually transfer and take on parasites and bacteria from pigs. And that was one of the big things that Doug warned about. And like, I think our DNA is really close to pigs. And that's why we can use like heart valves from pigs in surgeries and that sort of thing. We can accept those, you know, a human being can accept pig. So he warned against that, and that made a lot of sense to me. So over the years, I have, you know, that's kind of a rule of thumb is no pork. And now I feel like I have, like, if I do choose to have any meat, I'm actually totally almost 100% off fish because I can't find good quality fish up here. Maybe you can talk about that in a minute about New Zealand fish, but the fish is coming from the Pacific here. I haven't found it to be clean enough to eat. And so I'm avoiding fish because of that. As far as meat, I may, if it's like really good quality, local, I may eat a little bit, like I would say at the moment it's maybe once every month or two, something like that. So it's not, I'm not saying I'm 100% vegetarian. I haven't practiced veganism for a very long time. I did many years ago. But I got to I brought butter back into my life, and that was actually partially because of Doug as well, because Doug taught about putting butter on your vegetables, like your yams, your carrots, all these vegetables, in order to assimilate vitamin A. And Sally Fallon, Weston Price, Sally Fallon, in Nourishing Traditions, that was the big cookbook, and that's what we followed. I have one here, but I rarely, I've incorporated so much into my diet, I rarely actually look at the book anymore. But that was, 20 years ago, that was the nutrition that Doug taught, and I still am very much practicing that today.
Oh, beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah. So I eat a lot of, one of the things that I don't eat a lot of, and that I find I'm so grateful for not doing it, is eating a lot of grains. So I avoid grains. I'll have a little bit of quinoa now and again. And by that, I mean like maybe once a month I'll have quinoa. Yeah, like I said, I'm almost completely off of wheat. Rice, I rarely eat. Like if I'm going to make a really good curry, I'll maybe make a coconut rice, nice basmati coconut milk rice to go with that. And again, that may be like once every other month or something like that, that I'll have a little bit of rice. But I don't use any grains in my diet as staples anymore. Like what I do now is when I get up in the morning, I have my supplements with some lemon water, and I do a turmeric, ginger, ashwagandha, shatavari hot drink with coconut milk and some cardamom, and I drink that every morning. And then on solid food, I fast until afternoon, and I have most days I'll have celery juice, fresh juiced celery juice, and that's my diet in the morning. And then I usually have like my main meal with with a really good vegetable medley, like lots of vegetables. I do like starchy vegetables occasionally, like yams and squash, especially in the winter. I lay off of those in the summer months. But in the winter months, like a good starchy vegetable is good. So I'll have my good solid meal in sort of mid-afternoon. And as a rule, I don't eat after 6 p.m. And yeah, so that's basically how I eat.
Okay.
Yeah. And very little snacks, we have, in Canada, we have something called Mary's Crackers, which is a gluten-free, made from flax and different seeds, a little cracker, and that's my treat. If I want a little treat, I'll have a few Mary's Crackers, but I eat very simply. Yeah, occasionally I'll do like a protein drink, and I use Garden of Life raw protein powder. It's really an excellent. You have to be so careful with all of these protein powders. There's most of them are just completely filled with junk, but this particular company does a really good job creating great protein drinks. So I'll do that. I'll use it with a little bit of coconut milk and
Garden of Life.
Yeah, Garden of Life. Yeah, you probably have them. You probably have it in New Zealand. I think it's made in the U.S.
Okay.
You see,
over $60.
they are. You definitely, like now. I think they're up to like $60 some here.
Okay.
But it's worth it. They're really worth it. Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
I maybe do one of those like 3 times a week or something like that. I love to do them with coconut milk, so I have to be not to take too much coconut milk. I mean, I'm all about, I love to have we want those essential fatty acids, right? And we want that coconut oil and that coconut milk, but I can tend to overdo it if I at one point I was doing like one of those drinks every day, and I gained a few pounds, so I was like, okay, I'm going to back off, and I do it like maybe 3 times a week. Yeah.
Okay.
Coconut milk actually is coconut oil, and coconut milk is actually my main source of fat.
Okay, well, nice. Yeah, I love coconut. It's really good food. You know, it's not overly sweet or anything like that.
Can you get coconut milk in the liter containers in New Zealand, and
No,
not in the can?
Yeah, we sell coconut water, which is not quite the same thing.
No.
I like the cream, the creamy stuff that comes.
We have an excellent product. It's called Real Thai, and we have it in the liter containers, like the cartons, and it's excellent coconut milk.
Okay.
I buy it by the case.
Yeah, actually, reminds me of a friend of mine used to buy it for her kids. I think she was sort of bringing them up on a vegan or vegetarian diet, and so she had a lot of that sort of thing.
I don't recommend coconut milk in the cans. If people can avoid eating anything out of cans.
Yeah, I agree with that. I remember reading in Weston Price's book that canned food had a pretty nasty effect on pretty much everyone. So yeah, I definitely, one thing that I really cut out completely is canned fruit. In the syrup. You know, I used to love the Asian fruits because we get the, you know, the Southeast Asian kind of fruits in here, the rambutan and longan and lychee and all this sort of stuff, and jackfruit. Oh, they're just amazing, beautiful fruits. You know, I've had a few trips to Asia and I love them over there when, you know, you can buy them on the street, you know, buying them naturally, and it's so much nicer than in the can. But, you know, I used to treat myself the canned stuff, but I don't even do that anymore. I think must be like 50% sugar or something.
Yeah. Just get the good fresh fruits.
Yeah. Sometimes you just gotta face the willingness to be without, I suppose. Yeah.
I've been incorporating apples in my diet, and I eat about 2 apples a day. And when I was visiting my sons last summer, my one son was like, "Oh, you shouldn't be eating all of those apples. Like at the most, I eat 2 apples a day." And he's like, "Oh, you shouldn't eat all those apples," because he was looking up. It's got 20. Each apple has 25 grams of sugar. And I was like, "Wow, that's a lot." But then I laid off of them for a little while. But then I realized, like, my body really wanted them. And I really feel that like apple pectin absorbs radiation. It's one of the few things. It's that, and zeolite clay is also excellent for absorbing radiation. And we're just inundated with electromagnetic radiation. So I feel intuitively, I feel like that's why my body really wants the apples. And so I went back to eating a couple a day.
Okay.
Sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, what's that?
I was going to say that I think it's probably a good idea to buy apple pectin as well and incorporate the actual pectin in your diet, as a concentrate. That's, if you're looking at really removing some of the radiation out of your tissues, I think that's an excellent way to do it. But
it reminds me, my mum makes this Birch's muesli, where she has grated apple and lemon juice in the muesli. It's amazing. It's so good. Yeah. Should do that for her bed and breakfast guests. I actually took a page out of your book a few weeks ago, and I bought myself a little jug, and I've been cutting up apple and putting that in a jug of water. I would get a day out of each apple or so, maybe day and a half. Yeah, that's really nice. Good way to sort of keep hydrated, because just water on its own, it's,
Yeah.
I know sometimes it's so sort of mundane.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, I like my lemons, and then in the summertime I put some sliced cucumber in my water. I like sliced cucumber. It has an effect of helping with hydration, like helping the body maintain hydration. I found, and it's also very cooling. So cucumbers have a cooling effect. Their post-digestive effect is cooling. So I often will put that in the summer months.
Okay.
But every day I use lemons.
Is that why people say cool as a cucumber?
Yeah, I think so.
NATO?
Yeah. So how would you like to complete our chat for this evening?
Well, it's kind of funny. I was thinking maybe I should talk about my appendectomy, or re-experiencing my appendectomy.
Yeah.
So the first time I ever went to one of Illia's point holding groups was in 2010 in Arizona. And there was what, about 12 people at that group, maybe 12, 14, 10 people.
I don't remember.
Yeah.
Somewhere thereabouts. Yeah.
And I think the first time I got on the table, first time I was on the table. So in point holding, when we say on the table, that means a person's on a massage table, and that's the point holdee, and then the people around them who are going to hold their pressure points on their big toe, or the middle of their foot, or the back of their necks. Those people are the point holders. And I had a couple of really good, quite experienced point holders, and one of them was on the heart points, pushing in here in my ribs, and the other one I think was on the pineal point inside of my big toe. If that's my foot, I think it's the point there, around there anyway. And maybe a year or so beforehand, maybe 2 years, 2 years before, I had had an appendectomy. Went on a road trip, ate some bad food, I think, ate McDonald's, I'm not perfect, and anyway, maybe a few weeks later, I ended up in hospital, and I felt really bad at home one day. I was at university actually, and I went to I was writing some stuff for the university magazine, and I went in there and lay down and said, "Wow, I don't really feel very good." And the guy said, "Well, go and see a doctor or whatever. There's one on campus, go this way." And so I went to this doctor, and he pushed my stomach a bit. Long story short, I ended up in hospital. Had my appendix taken out, and it was a really intense week. I've heard of people saying, appendectomy's no big deal, go hospital, have it cut out, back at work a day or two later. But for me, it was a really traumatic experience. I ended up with a catheter because I couldn't go to the toilet, and I couldn't go number one. And I was, I can remember saying to the nurse, no, I can go, it'll be right, waiting there for 10 minutes or 20 minutes or whatever, and couldn't go. And anyway, they gave me a catheter, and that was pretty horrible. And I think it took maybe 6 months or a year or something to sort of get my going to the toilet kind of vaguely normal after that. But anyway, I went to this point holding. Sorry, I don't mean to gross anyone out if there's any sensitive listeners there, but anyway, it was a really traumatic experience, not just the week in hospital, but the 6 months or whatever afterwards. And I went to this point holding event, and this was the first point holding I had, was re-experiencing a good portion of this this whole experience. And I remember sitting in my house before I went to the hospital, and this was like a really vivid memory, and the words and the feelings that I had, the word pattern was, and I said this aloud in the point holding, it was, I want to be sick so he'll notice me.
Mm.
So the he was my dad, my birth dad, and so associated with this experience was a lot of sort of, you know, daddy issues or whatever, or, you know, the feeling of being unloved, unnoticed, you know, that sort of thing. So I don't want to say for definite, you know, I can't say for definite that that sort of feeling caused the my appendix to go weak, because it was probably diet related. You know, I was a university student and pretty stressed, and there were probably a ton of factors involved. But yeah, it was just a real eye opener to how we can hold something, like John uses the phrase, in a continual state of creation. Like, part of my mind was just set on this repeating tape loop. I want to be sick so he'll notice me. And I've had this kind of pattern again in other ways in my life, wherein as a little kid I didn't quite have the same level of pride that the other kids had, and I was kind of willing to be made fun of in a way, and that was something that was good, I think, and that I was willing to be made fun of, but I took it to a sort of a masochistic level. And I think in 2015 or 2016 or so, I found a pattern that was kind of cultural. So my dad's side is British, and I remember thinking this is the kind of pattern that a court jester would have, where they want to, you know, make a fool of themselves, screw things up, and sort of maybe be a failure to get the attention. And so another thing when that happened, you know, another thing I learned is, you know, what we find in BE, sometimes we get it, we address a pattern, or we find a pattern at one level and do as much transmutational work with it as we can during that session, and a few years later we find it's sort of still there in part. So yeah, a couple
comes out in layers for sure.
Yeah.
The memories are like the subtlety of the memory can surface until it's completely rooted out. You know, we may think that we're through a certain pattern, and we worked really hard. I mean, first of all, for people watching this, we allow what comes forth on the table. We don't sort of forefront it or decide prior of, okay, we know we had this trauma and we're going to work with that today. We don't do it that way. We get on the table, we lie perfectly still, we breathe deep and even without ceasing, and we allow the memory, the word patterns, and the emotion to surface naturally. So we often have, you know, the same memory can come many times on the table, and we may feel that we've had a tremendous transmutation around it, yet maybe even a year later, that same pattern will resurface again. And it just means that there's still a little bit more to go, a little bit more to let go. And we just allow whatever comes to,
yeah, I think that's a really important thing for having a good point holding, is just going in with that attitude of,
yes,
whatever trauma it is. Like I'm sure we've both seen people experience, or, you know, re-experience traumas that are really mundane, like I bumped my toe on the couch or something. You know, I remember one guy had a word pattern: my foot hurts, my foot hurts, my foot hurts, and someone else can, you know, re-experience something really, really, you know, profound and intense, like giving birth or being born, or, you know, being bullied at school or something that might be really, really emotionally sensitive.
And those simple things that come up, like I hurt my toe or something like that. If we keep going with that, that can lead us into a really deep, profound experience.
Absolutely, yeah.
And it can start off like that. I remember, it reminds me of one of my first times on the table. I had a memory of riding. I was probably like 3, and I was riding my tricycle, and I fell over and scraped my knee. So if I had have judged that memory as being, well, that's not traumatic enough, or that's not, I've had much more, greater traumas than that. But I stayed with that, and it led me into a really deep level. So those things are. It's interesting to watch that our own consciousness, we can call it our divine intelligence, or that perfection within us, knows exactly what to give, and at the exact right timing. And it's just up to us to keep going with it. We just allow it and really work with that. I think that's really important to, just to really be willing to let whatever comes come up and work with what we're given.
Yeah, that's sort of what I wanted to say. I didn't mean to say that one, bumping your toe is more or less important as a memory than a car crash or whatever else.
Right.
Yeah. As far as accessing the depths of the human mind, you can use pretty much any memory. Yeah. Can work with anything. Yeah.
Willingness is the key. Yeah, somebody asked me an interesting question yesterday on the Body Electronics group page on Facebook, which is just called Body Electronics, the Evolution of Consciousness. And the question was, if you could say something to Julian Assange, who, it came from a meme that Julian had written something about being, feeling like he was dying, and that he was just going through some really tremendous experiences in jail. And so this woman wrote, well, if you were to, if you could say something to Julian, what would it be? And my first response to that was, thank you, for what you've done and what you've shown us, and we love you. Those are the first things that came. So then she wrote, this woman wrote again, well, but what about something body electronics? What would you say as a principle for him? And I really sat with it for a while, and I felt like, that's, I can't even imagine what he goes through. But the feeling, the principle that came was lovingly and willingly endure all things. And that may seem, and I'm not saying that in a callous way either. You have to really feel that principle. And when we're sharing that principle, we share it with compassion. It's extremely difficult to break through the painful experiences that we find ourselves in, either in life or in re-experiencing trauma on the table. When those painful experiences come forth, that has to be the first principle, that lovingly and willingly endure all aspects. That has to be present in order for us to go into the transmutation process, for us to really get to what needs to be released. that's what we have resistance to. And like, you know, what we know in body electronics, most of the resistance that we hold is unconscious. We may not have any idea how much resistance we hold until we start unearthing it. So that's, I think maybe we can finish with that. Just that one principle, and we can, you know, we can practice that every minute of every day. Just remember, you know, if something comes in our environment that triggers us or is painful, to know that, you know, to invite it, to be, you know, instead of having a knee-jerk reaction to push it away or push away pain or suffering, to be like, okay, I see you, I feel you, and I love you, and I'm willing to be present with it in order for us to let it go. We don't hold it. We don't just lovingly and willingly endure and just, you know, just for the sake of experiencing a painful situation. We hold that. We hold that energy so that it can come into the present, come into the ever-present now, and in order for it to be released. Okay, shall we end there? I'm going to, Guy, would you stay on now for just a moment? I'm going to attempt to stop the recording, and then we can have a small chat. Okay. Okay. Thank you, everybody, for joining Guy and I for this this is our third time, so look forward to the fourth. And oh, you can find my website, wholehealthcenter.com. And that's it for tonight. Thank you so much.